I actually clicked the wrong button, and so I bought a 20-foot inflatable snowman and set that up recently. And it was a spectacle. And the neighbors came out and were watching, and people stopped their cars to look. And I was like, "Yep, I'm that neighbor now."
Yeah, I saw.
So we'll see what happens.
I saw some photos of that. Almost taller than your house.
It is actually taller than the house. It just hits the top, what would be the top of the chimney. So it is massive. But you know what? Brings joy to people, and at least my neighbors know who I am.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it's a good direction. We're 2 houses down from this. You'll know what we're talking about.
Right, exactly.
Welcome to Deep Dive with me, Sean C. Fettig. Happy holidays, everybody. We are releasing this episode on Christmas Eve, so if you celebrate, Merry Christmas. Regardless of where you are or what you're doing, I hope you're enjoying the season, be it with family or friends or pets, or maybe just enjoying some well-earned you time. In honor of the season, today's episode is a special one. I'm joined by friend of the pod, Justin Hentges, to talk about some of our favorite things of 2023. Favorite books, favorite music, movies, TV, trips, experiences, etc. And also what we're looking forward to in 2024. There are some laughs, some reflections, some poignancy, some hope. Maybe you can relate to some of this, and maybe it makes you reflect positively on your own year, on some of those things that have brought you joy. But before we get there, I did check in with Santa Claus via the chatbot Claude and asked him about his favorite things of 2023. And this is the message he sent, hot off the presses, today, Christmas Eve, 2023. It says this message should be read with the sound of jingle bells chiming softly with a hint of jazz in the background. Okay, this is the message. Ho, 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 and a merry almost Christmas to you, Deep Dive listeners. Santa Claus here, reporting live from the North Pole, taking a quick break from toy wrangling and reindeer wrangling. Rudolph still has a thing for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer karaoke, bless his sparkly antlers. But what's a Santa to do between wrapping sprees and chimney sprinting? Why, reflect on the year's finest moments, of course. Now, 2023, it wasn't your average bowl of milk and cookies kind of year. We had our ups and downs. A rogue elf tried to invent self-wrapping presents. Let's just say glitter never sleeps. Rudolph accidentally dyed his fur hot pink during a failed hair fluffing experiment. Mrs. Claus still calls him Rosie the Reindeer. And let's not forget the great gingerbread house incident of 23. Spoiler alert, gingerbread walls make terrible snowball forts. But hey, who focuses on the lumps in the eggnog when you have mountains of sugar plum goodness to savor? This year, my heart overflowed with more joy than a hot cocoa fountain. Remember that little girl who wished for a pet unicorn? Her face when she found a sparkly slipper from a lost unicorn's ballet recital? Pure magic, I tell you. And the boy who wrote me a poem about his grandma, the cookie queen of the cookie queen of Bumbleberry Bend. Tears in my beard, that one. Of course, it wasn't all sugar plum fairies and reindeer romps. I saw kindness bloom in unexpected places. A shy penguin sharing his fish with a lost polar bear cub. A family of Yetis. a family of Yetis donating their warmest scars to a shivering snowman. It's moments like these that remind me, Christmas isn't just about presents under the tree. It's about the twinkle in your eyes, the warmth in your mittens, and the song in your heart. So as the snow settles and the elves finish their caroling practice, bless their squeaky voices, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your kindness, your laughter, and your spirit that shines brighter than Rudolph's nose on a foggy night. Remember, even when the world feels like a bowl of lumpy mashed potatoes, there's always a sprinkle of Christmas magic waiting to be found. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a date with a plate of Mrs. Claus's gingerbread. Double strength this year, for the incident, naturally. But before I go, let me remind you, don't forget the milk and cookies, keep your stockings hung by the chimney with care, and a Merry Christmas to all. And the jingle bells should be fading into a cheerful holiday tune. All right, stay safe, Santa. If you like this episode or any episode, please give it a like on your favorite podcast platform and or subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. And as always, if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments, please feel free to email deepdivewithsean@gmail.com. Let's do a deep dive. Justin, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. How are you?
Merry Christmas, Sean. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well as well. What are you doing for Christmas?
I am doing nothing. Just hanging out with some friends and having a very relaxing, no drama holiday. How about you?
Yeah, same. That's the plan.
Right, right. See where the night takes us, huh?
Okay, so I thought that for Christmas I would try to shift a little bit away from the fatalistic, dire conversations that I have been having lately on the podcast and instead would focus on some fun things. And so I thought it would be fun to have you here and we could talk about some of our favorite things of the year.
Well, that sounds great, but I prepared all of this material on all of the bad things that have happened, and now where am I going to use that? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So the rules are, I don't, it's a very non-restrictive rule, which is, so we're going to be talking about 2023, but the stuff that we touch on doesn't have to be stuff that was made or created or released or anything in 2023. It just has to be something we like experienced in 2023.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I can do that.
Okay. Where should we start? Should we start with something?
I think we should start with music.
Okay.
What is your favorite thing you've been listening to this year?
Well, Spotify always tells me.
So what was your number one, Sean?
I discovered this singer. He's not new, but he's new to me. His name is J.S. Andara. And I think he's Kenyan, I think. But he lives in the United States and he has kind of this like folksy Americana vibe to him. But he's got this also almost like international sensibility to his lyrics. It's just really cool. I really like him. But I was like reintroduced this year, obviously for sad reasons, but to Sinead O'Connor.
Yes.
I think she just didn't get a lot of the credit she deserves. So after her death, I started listening to her music again. It's just good music. It's good, heartfelt, like what you want music to be, not just poppy and disconnected, which is also good.
Yeah. Music should have, can fit different moods or different, times. But the singer-songwriters that, really help you connect with maybe a place in yourself that you didn't even know existed.
Mm.
I haven't listened to Sinead O'Connor until her death. And that's what I found has happened a lot. Is like when you hear someone's passing or something like that, I go back and then I listen to their music, even if I haven't listened to it, in a while.
Like Tina Turner.
Like Tina Turner. Although I listen to Tina Turner pretty regularly.
She's on pretty regular rotation generally. I don't know. It's like when somebody dies, it's like you listen with a different ear.
Yes.
And like that, I definitely did that with Tina. And I think it was for the first time, instead of just being like an earworm or like a catchy song or like feeling kind of powerful, she really had an amazing voice.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And the art, you're hearing the art in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just the singing, but the artistic quality to it.
What about you?
It's funny because after one of our last conversations last year, I started listening to country music hardcore again, like really getting into it. But really have for the most part stuck with the female artists.
Mm-hmm.
So my Spotify top 5 were actually the Chicks songs, because I am a little bit of a fan. In 13 months, and 3 of them were in 2023, I saw the Chicks in concert 4 times.
Wow.
3 different countries, 2 different continents. And the last one, which was in the DC area, was so random. I was there for work and was able to get tickets, and I bought them like the week before, and I was front row center.
Oh, wow.
And like just lost my mind because both the fun kind of pop country, right, but also especially with some of their newer album, like just some very kind of soulful pieces, and just I don't know, there was just something about it that when that album came out and previous albums has always spoke to me. So it was really cool seeing them, but it also allowed me to I saw Mary Morris when I was in Sweden. She opened for the Chicks, and so getting into her music more, Ashley McBride, and then like all of the like 90s women, like Shania and Faith and Trisha, and like just diving back into that and seeing what they've done since then. And I don't know, there was just something about it that was like almost healing, given how long I had not listened to country
Mm.
because of everything. So it was really cool.
How's their show?
Phenomenal. I really liked it. I thought that they bring good energy. Their band is amazing. Just the skill level there. It is funny when you see artists multiple times on their same tour, like by the third or fourth, like for sure the fourth show, but even by the third show, I was like, oh, I know what joke's coming. Uh,
Oh, really? I always wonder about that.
yeah. But then they also make it, fresh, right? It's kind of, I mean, it's a kind of neat thing to see how an artist can, play the same song over and over and yet make it fresh, a little fresh each time. And so, yeah, so it was fun.
Did they do Ready to Run?
They do Ready to Run. Gosh, I should know this. Yes, I think so. Wait, I have their set list. Hold on. Now I got to know this.
Wait, as in like you created your own set list or you stole theirs?
Oh, no, 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 no. Yeah. So it depended on the show. But they did do Ready to Run. At least two of the nights I was there. No, the last time when I was in the front row, I got afterwards. Stage crew comes out and they give the set list, and then I also got a guitar pick.
Wait, the stage crew. So there's only a handful of set lists.
Yeah.
So they just hand it to anybody who gets there first, or they
like at the end of the show. Like, I guess I didn't know this was a thing, but I guess this is a thing. Like, if you're in the front row, like you hang out after the concert because I guess you get free stuff. I don't know.
Is that true?
So I am basing this on an N of one. But anytime I'm in the front row again, I'm going to hang out and see what I can get.
Do you think they recognized you by this point?
So I think they may have, only because we were wearing t-shirts that were quite recognizable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they had called them out before, once at the first concert and then at other ones. And it was, yeah. So it was fun.
Well, what was the t-shirt?
All right. Well, so now this is going to be a rabbit hole for a second, but there's a movie that is one of the Harley Quinn movies. And in it, one of the characters wears a t-shirt that is a question that says, "I shaved my balls for this?" ? And so my partner wore that to their first show randomly and got called out. And so then we started wearing them to the other shows and got called out because it's a funny shirt.
You know, it'd be amazing if that is the title of their next album.
Oh my God, could you imagine? I would die. I would be done. Like, I would feel like my purpose on earth had been fulfilled at that point.
Okay, well, 2024, maybe we have something to talk about.
Maybe.
Hey,
maybe.
did they play any new music?
Well, so they played. I mean, they played Gaslighter, right? And then they also they played Rainbow. What was the Rainbow song? The one that Miley and Dolly sang. So they played that Rainbow Land. Otherwise, there were no new songs.
Yeah, like they weren't testing anything.
Right. No, not at all. Although, they did go after they left the States, they did go down to Australia, and there was a moment where I was like about to hop on a plane to go to Oz and see if I could see them there. But then I realized that was a little expensive.
That would tip you into like a groupie.
Yeah, that could be like, that's like the start of like some sort of like, and then he sold all of his stuff, and and I just want to go there.
Okay, have you been watching TV?
Have I been watching TV? Yes.
Okay, what's your favorite series you watched this year?
So, a couple. So first off, I just think the Great British Bake Off is like one of the best shows and one of the best, like, obviously reality shows, but just shows in general. And I just love, like, there's something about that. I want to learn how to bake and eat all of the things, right? There's that. But then also the just the way it's a competition, but it's like it brings out like it's bringing out the best of these folks, right? They're in competition, but they're rooting for each other and they're helping each other, and it feels so much nicer than kind of the other competitions we see with the backstabbing and the forming alliances. Like it's just fun, and it's a nice kind of escape, I think, from some of the other stuff on TV. So that's one that I always enjoy when it comes out. And then I've watched The Expanse, which I think is now like the fourth time I've watched it.
You mentioned this last year.
Yeah, I think this is a thing in the fall. I guess I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch The Expanse again. I don't know, but I just love it. I love the space thing. And then my friend recently got me to start watching Virgin River. Have you
Oh
seen?
my God. This is such a soap opera.
I no, I'm like, I am not gonna watch this. I am not gonna watch this. And then like a half a day goes by. I've done no chores because I'm just sitting on the couch watching Virgin River.
Really? And you're actually paying attention.
Well, paying attention enough to go, that's not actually going to happen, or that couldn't possibly happen, or why are they allowing that to happen, right? But yeah, so that's it. So the Brits, space, and some trashy TV. That's what's on my TV. What about you? What's on your TV?
Have you watched Reservation Dogs?
I watched the first season. Yeah.
It's kind of like laugh out loud, and it's also really hard to watch because there's this like undercurrent of the reality of life for people living on reservations and what, the country has done.
Yeah.
One of my guests actually even mentioned this a few episodes ago. It is like what I think is like contemporary life on a reservation that isn't spun into something romantic and is actually devastating, and yet doesn't leave you feeling like shit. I think it's a really well done show. I really like it.
Cool. Is it my turn?
Yeah, you pick the next one.
All right. Well, why don't we just stick to the screen and just go with movies? What's the movies you've liked this year you've watched this year that have really stuck out to you?
So full disclosure, I don't actually watch a lot of movies. And I think it's because I'm becoming a creature of our society. Like I don't have an attention span. But one movie that I liked this year was Mascarpone or Mascarpone. Do you know how to say it?
You're asking somebody from northern Wisconsin to pronounce a word that's not.
Okay. It's an Italian movie, and it's this guy. So it's a married couple, and one of them he supports the two of them. I think he's an architect. And then the other one is like the homemaker. The architect comes home one day and blindsides his husband and says, I don't want to be together anymore. And I'm already dating someone, and it's like their best friend, and tells him to move out. Well, this guy doesn't work. The whole movie is like a year in his life of like having to move out, find his own place, make new friends, get a job. I guess it also sounds formulaic, but it's just very sweet and poignant and funny at the same time.
No, that sounds great. I had not heard of that. I need to put that on my list.
I think it's on Prime.
Oh, I do have Prime.
Prime has, like, you have to dig. Prime doesn't do a really good job of promoting stuff.
Yeah.
But if you dig, it's got a lot of really good stuff on it.
Yeah, their user interface is not very good at all. But I have found that, especially some foreign films that normally I wouldn't be able to find. So yeah, I totally appreciate that.
What about you?
So I'm not gonna lie. I tend to watch the same things over and over, like from the late 80s, early 90s, and then once in a while, like you throw on something more recent. But this year, I haven't gone. I mean, because of all the pandemic and stuff, like going to theaters for me was not a thing I really like to do, and I didn't like it even before the pandemic. But I saw Oppenheimer, which I thought was good. I saw Barbie, which I actually waited a number of months to see that, and I'm glad I did because I was able to see the film versus kind of the hype. There was okay, so you want to talk about like just absolutely horrible bad movie, but like I have watched like 3 times because it's so cheesy, is Love Again with Celine Dion, and I watch it just for the pieces.
Didn't that just come out?
It just came out.
And you've watched it like 3 times?
Yes. I just watch it so that I can listen, so I can have the music on, and then like I'll like stop whatever I'm doing and listen to her little parts, and then like just go on with it.
Is it bad?
Well, so I mean, I watched it 3 times, but yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's formulaic and cheesy, and I mean, but it's kind of, again, it's the cute, like, heartwarming story, and I think that's probably more like with all of these things. Like, I like that, like, with everything going on, you can just watch these things and feel like, oh yeah, no, stuff does work out, and people can get through things, and it's your brain knows that it's a formula, but it's a good formula.
She's had a rough couple years, right?
I know, I know.
Because like she has the theme song for that movie, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you can tell, like, she sounds great, but you can tell she's singing different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and just, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, she's such a powerhouse of vocals, and all, and then, but it's still like, maybe that's the reason I like it, is like, here's this person who, I know I thought was like, oh, she's always going to have this amazing voice and always be this amazing, be doing the concerts and all that. And then, you never know what's going to happen next. And yet she's still out there, trying to do, her art.
Mhm.
And I think that's admirable.
I'm always fascinated when you have anybody that excels at something and then the one debilitating thing they get targets that,
Yeah.
like that talent.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like with Julie Andrews, right? Like, she had the throat voice issue as well. And she had just a magical voice, such a powerful voice. I think a lot of times, I don't know, I think, like, if I just think about like that, like, what if something happened and what would I do? Like, would you kind of retreat into yourself, or would you try to persevere and figure out another way to, be you? And I look at people that have these amazing talents, and when something, happens to them, and they do pick themselves up and say, okay, I might not be able to sing anymore, but I can do something else, or I can still be me, right?
Mhm.
I don't know. It's neat to watch.
Do you think she has another album coming out?
Celine.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love if she did. So I was supposed to see her, well, in November of 2019, and then that show got postponed to March of 2020, which then got postponed and then finally canceled. And the next time, if Celine ever performs again, I don't care the cost. I want to go. I will sit in the nosebleeds just to be there, because I think that she's just an amazing performer.
Posh got me a handful of her albums. Maybe it was for last Christmas,
Ooh.
but it was like her newer stuff, which, I may have listened to once or twice, but I'm kind of partial to her 90s, early 2000s
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But so he got me her newer albums. And so I listened to them this past year, and they're so good. She's just so good.
Yeah. Yeah. It is funny because there are folks that, like, I listen to. I mean, this is kind of with, like, going back to, like, listening to folks, the country folks I listen to. Like, I listened to them for so long, and then I stopped. And it's like rediscovering what they've been doing in the past 20 years. And it's just like amazing.
Last week we went to get some like Christmas records.
Okay.
So we went to a couple of used record stores, and I came back with a handful, but I think I was a little surprised that my favorite one of them was the Judds Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
It's not new, but it's like kind of also rediscovering the Judds. And like the fascinating thing I think about the Judds is they don't actually have a wide range in their vocals, but the way that they sing and the way their voices blend together is there's something so powerful and beautiful about it.
I definitely agree with, like, that is an album. I remember that album. Like, I remember that album, like, growing up. I mean, I think at that time we probably had the tape, the cassette tape.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
But I remember, like, listening. That was one of the things we'd listen to, like, when we're decorating the Christmas tree at my parents' house. At my grandparents' house, it was more things like Bing Crosby and, that type of stuff on the record player. But I remember the Judds Christmas album. I'm gonna have to listen to that.
It's a good album. Okay, did you take any trips this year?
I did take some trips this year.
Did any stand out?
Yeah. I went to. So I took a 2-week trip to Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark in the summer. It was my first post-pandemic, like, foreign over the pond trip. And it was the first one where I had to fly from Seattle to Europe, which I was just like, oh my gosh, it takes forever to get over there. but I loved it. I had such a good time, and my family, a lot of my family is from Denmark, so that was really cool. That was the last part of my trip, going to Copenhagen and being able to, like, I don't know, just have that connection to where, one side of my family came from. And it was just really cool to be over there. And it was like, I saw the chick. That was one of the places I saw the chicks, was in Stockholm. I saw Bruce Springsteen when I was there, also in Sweden, and got to catch up with a college friend in Norway, and just like otherwise hang out and take the train and take the ferry and like bike around and just have like a non-touristy trip in some ways, because I didn't do all of the, like, I didn't have a lot of plans other than I was going to go to a place and hang out for a few days. And then, so I just did whatever I wanted and felt like that day. And it was really nice.
And so you were alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you feel, like, irrespective of the location, how do you feel about traveling alone?
I love traveling alone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love traveling with my partner. Like, it's great. And I love traveling with friends. Right. But the thing I like about traveling alone is you don't have anybody's itinerary but your own. Right. So one of the days I was actually in Bergen, and I was walking around, and I, just walked up, saw one of the viewpoints from the hills, walked around, sat at a cafe for a while, had lunch, then walked, and I could have gone and seen a bunch of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I knew all the museums, but it was a nice day out and it was just nice walking. And so I thought, I'd rather do this than go to a museum right now. And there was no negotiation with anyone else, right? It was just whatever I wanted to do. And so that was nice. Yeah.
So Posh and I typically will take one vacation a year that we just do separate from each other.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing mine just by myself. And I have some friends that are literally appalled that I am married and travel alone.
Really?
Yeah. People literally tell me I could never be away from my spouse for that long by myself. That's strange to me.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving because I don't want to be around Posh. I'm leaving,
right.
I'm doing this because this is just another part of myself that I enjoy doing.
Right. No, that's exactly. I totally appreciate that. It actually like has nothing to do with anybody else, right? It has just to do with you and wanting to have that experience and enjoying that part of yourself. I totally get that.
So good on you.
Well, and then so let me ask you this, Sean. Are there times when, well, first, you're going to have to tell me about your favorite trip, but also are there times when you're on your trips alone where you're like, I just had this cool experience. I really wish Posh was here. Or are you just cutting him out and he doesn't exist for those weeks that you're gone?
There are times where I want to do something, and for one reason or another, I feel like it would be more fun if Posh was there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just something for us to like talk about, and then like, hey, maybe we should go back sometime and go together,
Yeah.
Well, actually, that does. I mean, it is a good segue because I took a trip by myself this year to Ireland.
Ooh.
I always wanted to go, so I went for 8 or 9 days in February. Their weather is very similar to ours here in Seattle.
Okay.
I absolutely loved it. It was fascinating to be to be in like Ireland and have these new buildings integrated, what I think is very beautifully with churches that are thousands of years old. It's just fascinating. Have you ever been to Ireland?
I have not. It is definitely on my list of places I want to go. I've had a number of friends that have gone there, you included, and I everything I've heard about it just sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. And also, like, where there are flights now from Seattle that
are there?
Direct? Yeah, like direct Seattle to Dublin, and they're like $500.
Oh,
round trip.
Well, maybe having to book a flight in 2024 to go to Ireland then.
For sure.
So on your trips, what else was there? Any pleasant surprise or anything that you were like, I just didn't have any expectations here, and wow, I was really blown away? Or
in Ireland or anywhere?
Anywhere this year.
Yeah, so we also went to London, and this Posh and I did together.
Okay.
And so they have like the West End, which is kind of like their Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
So they had some shows, and one of them that Posh got tickets to was Back to the Future.
Oh, really?
New musical, which apparently is coming to Broadway.
Okay.
But I was kind of like, this is going to be so stupid. It turned out to be like, it was so good. It
Yeah.
was so good. It was like different enough to be interesting, but so reminiscent of the movie. And like the robotics were amazing. It was so good.
Oh, that's really neat. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Do they start with the Huey Lewis and the News song? Like, is that at least in the musical?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, good, good. Because, that is what, made those movies.
The car, you know how at the end of the movie,
Yeah,
the car takes off, right? And then we get Back to the Future too.
yeah.
The freaking car like lifted and flew up over the audience and rotated and disappeared.
Oh, that's really neat.
I mean, it was creepy because I was like, I don't know how they're doing this, but this car, it's a full on DeLorean, is over my head. It was crazy.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
What about you? Any pleasant surprises this year?
I would say, I mean, travel wise, I was really pleasantly surprised by Helsinki. So the only direct flight I could get from Seattle to that part of Europe was going through Helsinki, which I had never planned. I hadn't really planned on going to Finland when I planned this trip.
Mhm.
So I added on time to do that. And it was two things. One, it was a nice town. Like it's not a big city. It's not a Paris or a London, right? So it doesn't have that feel, but I thought it was just very pleasant and like the food was good. And I was there in June, so they had all kinds of pride flags and all kinds of Ukraine flags up.
Mm.
And I was just like, here are people living, very close to Russia and just kind of had a big middle finger towards, Putin. And I was like, I'm here for this. I'm here for these folks. So that was really nice.
I've heard a lot of good things about Helsinki. Any favorite books this year?
So I mean, I've been doing a lot of reading. I have been, taking more time to like sit down at the end of the night and read and just kind of using that as the escape, partly, or not escape, but just end of the night, partly because, Sean, to your point about like the attention span thing, like I have noticed that with myself as well of it's 10 minutes and I'm ready to go do something else. And so I've been trying to train myself a little bit back into you can sit for an hour and read and it's okay. So I've read a lot of history. I've read a lot of, I read this book To Make Men Free, which was about the Republican Party and the history of the Republican Party. And that was fascinating to watch that history go from, Lincoln onwards.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of other books about like just kind of trying to get outside of the realm of the capitalist society we live in and trying to be more present in my life and that type of thing. And then but the book that's like really like did me in this year, that like I was a wreck reading it and afterwards, but in kind of a very weird, like destroyed and hopeful way, and that was Unthinkable by Jamie Raskin, who's the congressman from Maryland. And if you remember, his son passed away from suicide a few days before the January 6th insurrection.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this book, he writes about both being at the Capitol during the siege and then also about like his son's death and dealing with that. And it was one of those where like I thought it was well written, but it was more the like way he wrote about his son Tommy and like the kind of almost just like a love letter to his son, but also to anyone who's suffered from mental illness, whether they've suffered or they've had a family member suffer. It just, I don't know, there was something about it that was both heartbreaking and hope giving. I just, even now it like just stirs so many emotions in me. And there's the part about the Capitol which is almost like the backstory to this, like the backdrop to this other story. And it was that other story that just stuck out. And so yeah, that was one of my favorite. I know it was written I think 2 years ago now, right? But well, a year ago, 2 years ago. But it was one I read and listened to. I both read it and listened to it because it was so like powerful. So yeah, that was one. And I'm currently reading this book called Trailed, which is about two murders in the Shenandoah in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to camp and I love to be out on the trails. And so I'm reading it and I'm having this like, oh my God, I'm never camping again. And also like, I can't wait to get out to camp. It's such a weird experience, but it's also very good. I'm going to finish that before the end of the year for sure.
Is it like a fiction or nonfiction?
It's nonfiction. It is by Catherine Miles. It's one woman's quest to solve the Shenandoah murders. And it is like that true crime, but also the two women that were murdered, Lolly and Julie, were lesbians, and it was May of '96, and they're in the Shenandoah National Park, which when I lived out east, like I'd go to a couple times a year to hike, and I don't know. So there's just all of these connections and just very interesting, but it's so well written, and it also is. I know the first time I go back out in a tent, like the next time I go out camping, I'm gonna like not sleep. But
I'm not going to, just from hearing. I love a good true crime, and I'm so drawn to them. But I'm always like 15 pages in, and I'm like, well, I'm not fucking sleeping ever again.
Right. Yeah. Well, this one, what's funny is I actually tried to start reading this in September, and I took it. I just grabbed it off my bookshelf as I went on a camping trip, and like I opened the first page, and I'm like, nope, that's not happening tonight. So, what about you? What books did you enjoy this year?
I read a book called Lincoln on the Verge, and I did not know this. And it actually is just a good reminder that what we know about American history, and then I guess by extension, what is American history, is just whatever dominant voices decide to tell us.
Mm-hmm.
I'll preface this by saying I've become more and more interested in the lost history of the United States. So Lincoln on the Verge is essentially like it's the 13 days between Lincoln leaving from Illinois and then arriving in DC to assume the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that there was an attempt by the southern states to interrupt the electoral college count. They had guards at the Capitol. They had locked down the Capitol, and people were outside screaming. That's reminiscent of like January 6th.
Right.
And then the entire way by rail from, Illinois to the Capitol, they were thwarting assassination attempts from like Southern agents on Lincoln the whole way. I didn't know that. There was so much of it that was actually just reminiscent of what we went through in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this weird dichotomy of feelings I had. One is, oh God, we're doing it again. But the other was, okay, but we survived it.
Right.
So maybe we will this time too,
Right. Like there's a hope there, a hope piece there, right? But there also is that, the dread of how many people are going to be hurt until we survive it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite book that I read this year was a book called Boy with the Bullhorn by Ron Goldberg. He was one of the founding members of ACT UP, the AIDS activism. They were much more militant than traditional queer activism at the time.
Yeah.
So they took protest into the street. They adopted the silence equals death logo. Anyway, he was kind of their chief sloganeer. So he came up with their slogans. He wrote this, I don't know how to characterize it. If it's both an incredibly well-researched historical account of ACT UP and AIDS activism, and it's also a memoir.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do that effectively, do something that's objectively historical that is also weaving in like a personal story.
Yeah.
Ron does such a good job of it. And it's another reminder to me that there are so many movements and so many people that have shaped this country and have done courageous things in times when, and in situations when large swaths of the country or the world were just absolutely against them, and they did it anyway and shaped the trajectory of the rest of our lives. And it's just, I consider these people, I'm talking about queer rights and AIDS activism, but it made me think about like civil rights and women's lib and indigenous folks' rights. And it just to come back to the stories that get lost. There are so many founding parents to movements that contribute to the history of our country that are just so overlooked. And I just feel at this point in my life committed to finding those stories and finding those people, because I think they're much more inspiring in our contemporary world than some of the people we've been told are heroes. And maybe they are the founding quote unquote fathers of the United States. I think they were doing their best to create a good government and to find compromise, and I want to give them their due for that. But I just don't think they're the moment right now for me.
Yeah. Sean, that's really interesting because I mean, I am in that same space because I have so many books, like biographies of folks that are the famous folks, right? Like the ones that, quote unquote made the country, or made the institutions that we use to govern our society, or we don't use to govern our society.
Mm.
And I'm glad I did, because it gave me a perspective. But I'm at the same boat where I'm like, I want to hear like the stories of the folks that we overlook in our regular kind of teaching of history, and the people that are truly the activists and the folks on the front line that are figuring this out. And the act up piece, that reminds me of a story I heard when I first started working in the government, and like the storming of the NIH, quote unquote storming of the NIH campus.
Mm-hmm.
And just how powerful that was, how needed it was, and also just how sad it was that it was needed, right? Like that you think about that, and other folks when they're protesting things like that. And it's like there's so much bravery goes into that, but also like here are folks that are just trying to survive, right? That are just trying to live, and a government that just was ignoring them. And I think that's one of the things, when folks talk about the better nature of our people, or the Americans will always do something, do everything else before they do the right thing. It's the people that come out in the streets that to protest for equality, for equity, for humanity, that I think really drive all of that. So yeah, I was just looking at my bookshelves as we were talking, and thinking about all of the books that I have that I need to read that are not the biography of the quote unquote great man.
Mm-hmm. I think, well, we've heard the story of, the founding, I always say parents, but the founding fathers so much. And we've read all the biographies or heard the stories about, the, quote unquote great leaders. And there's something, I think there's a thread that is shared among them that we consider to be valor or courage or bravery or strength, et cetera. And I think those are all hopeful and those are all uplifting. But what draws me to people like Ron Goldberg and civil rights leaders and women's lib leaders is that they're leading not because they have this character per se, or this trait, or this chromosome. They're leading it because their body is on the line. Like they
Yes.
have no other choice. And like that is
Yes.
much more interesting to me in bringing out or activating that gene in people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And there's something, it's even, I mean, the thing now that like when I do read, because I've read the what is it, the Edmund Morris, trilogy on Teddy Roosevelt, and it was a very interesting read. But like all of these books now, what I find interesting on the quote unquote great leaders is I learn more when I learn about their faults, right? Like the things that they actually like, when they screwed up, like when they made mistakes. Like that to me is on that side more interesting. And then you're right, like the folks that their lives are on the line, and so they go and they do. I mean, this is the thing that I do think still makes this country great, is they go and they protest their grievances, right? They take to the picket line, or write their senator, or go get handcuffed to the desk or whatever it is, and because they don't have any other option. And it's the non-violent piece of that
Mm-hmm.
that I think is just profound. And because normally, because that non-violent piece is met with violence from the state.
Exactly.
And that's it's those are the real heroes.
Yeah. When the consequence is not losing an election, which, okay, sure, people like Liz Cheney, that's a very heroic act, I guess, what she's doing, right?
Yeah.
But like losing an election and holding that up as being a great sacrifice is very different than chaining yourself, like you said, to a counter or a table, or potentially losing your life. Those are just very different motivators.
Right. Agree. And I don't think it's anything. I mean, I think you're right. It's not to disparage, one person's sacrifice over another, but there is a difference. And I think the piece of it is like to respect. There's a respect there that runs through all of that thread, though, right? And that is the part that I think we're really getting in a weird spot here. But like the pieces that I remember, from my early childhood growing up, and like hearing the history lessons and talking to my parents and my grandparents. And, it really is that, like, in America, you can do anything you want, and you should be treated as you should be treated as a human being, and you should be treated by the way that you behave, right? The way your character, not because of anything else. And that piece, like, still runs strong for me, that's what we should be all working to get, right? And so I think there are places where you have you have folks that do stand up to that type of oppression of and they're just, it's heroic. And you can see that in what's happening here today with some of the major battles. For example, the woman from Texas, right, who is taking on a system because if she has a real medical issue, and I'm sure that's not what she wants to, she doesn't want to be dealing with all of this. She wants to be able to take care of her family and herself, and but she's standing out there saying this is a problem, and you guys really need to understand what it is that you're doing when you make these laws. That, yeah, anyway, happy stuff. We're supposed to be talking about happy stuff.
I think there is something hopeful in this, though, because I do think even when we can't verbalize it or intellectualize it, I think we respond differently to situations. Like, I think her name is Kate Cox.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
in Texas.
Yeah.
She's doing nothing in pursuit of self-interest. Her body is on the line. And so she has to do this, right?
Right.
And I think that resonates different with people than calculated political moves or actions that are taken that people maybe didn't want to, but they feel like they have to. And then the ramifications are somewhat limited, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it just resonates differently. And so I'm hopeful that, given the example you gave, that, these types of things, as they happen and people see what this does when people's bodies are on the lines, that means something.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. And maybe we can just all get off the, from the certainty of being right about our position, and instead realize that we're still talking about human beings and community members and family. And, it's just, when you stick to your position as the right thing, you forget that there are people out there.
All right. Okay.
All right. Well, Sean, what is something that, has in 2023 that was happened to you that was really profound or really meaningful?
So one of the places that I went, like I said, I did that 4-country trip this year to Europe. And one of the countries was Austria. And I took a day trip kind of on a whim. I hadn't planned for it, and went to Mauthausen concentration camp.
Ooh.
And I was actually really nervous to do it because I just did not know what to expect. I've always been fascinated by World War II and the rise of fascism. So I've read a lot of books. I've seen a lot of documentaries, but there was just something different to be there.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to expect. And I was by myself. I actually think that ended up being for the better, because I could spend much more time just processing what I was seeing and feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get there, the first thing they do is, on the organized tour, it's just a small tour, they walk you around the perimeter. And Mauthausen is like set on top of a hill, and there's valleys all around it, and there's farmhouses. It's so beautiful. I was just like standing the edge of like a cliff. I was looking out. I think I was overwhelmed by how bucolic it was. It was so dissonant, like what was happening there, and then just surrounded by all this beauty. You really have to be in these spaces to get a sense of like how small these rooms are with hundreds of people, and how thin the walls are. And it was just really overwhelming. But one thing that was really lovely was that after it was liberated, a whole bunch of countries and groups put up special monuments and plaques on the walls on the inside of Mauthausen.
Mm-hmm.
It took like 40 years, but finally whoever was administering Mauthausen allowed a queer group to put up a monument or a plaque that recognized gay prisoners that had been there and had died, and recognized them as an oppressed group that had been targeted by the Nazis. It was a very profound experience. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Really important to see that, and to be there, and to have all of that, the feelings and everything. And it's tough, right?
Yeah. And it was also the first time, I'm embarrassed to say this at my age, but because I was always like, how does this happen? How does everyone in a country just turn on a group of people? It was the first time being inside that I realized, oh, these are prisons.
Mm-hmm.
they passed laws that made people illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Germans could justify this by saying, well, these are criminals.
Right.
Gay people are engaging in criminal acts. That's why they're going.
Right. It starts with this action as a criminal act, and then it becomes the people doing this action are the criminals, and then it becomes the people are the criminals, and they are forced, and a lot of it's hidden from regular folks, right? I mean, there's a story I remember hearing, and I can't remember, so this may not be factual, but whatever. But of one of the generals when they liberated one of the concentration camps, like bringing the mayor of the town and like the city council of the town nearby, and like showing them and saying this was happening right here. Like just the blindness that we sometimes, if there's stuff happening right in front of us and we just turn away from it, right?
While I was there, I was thinking about abortion in the States, and I was thinking about the stuff that's happening to trans folks and queer folks in the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's really scary. It's scary.
Well, that's anytime you put somebody into the other category, right? And you just say, well, there's something different. There's something they're not like me, or they, I wouldn't do that, or I would never be in the experience to have to make that choice. As the more you wall yourself out from people, the easier it is to forget that they're people.
Our tour guide made this comment. He was talking about this, like the othering of people, like Romanian gypsies were put into concentration camps. They often were fed last, and if there was no food, they didn't get fed, right? And the reason they had those rules was because there's the stereotype that gypsies are thieves and sneaky, so they would be fed last. And then because they were fed last and sometimes didn't get any food, then yes, they would sometimes sneak food or steal food where they could because they weren't getting fed. And then when they'd get caught, see, the gypsies are all sneaky and thieves.
Right.
That is the kind of rhetoric we're engaged in, not just in the United States, but we're seeing this rise of this kind of xenophobic nationalist rhetoric globally, and it's just chilling.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. You're exactly right.
But anyway, what was your profound experience?
So mine is definitely not as worldwide insight as yours, but it also happened in Europe. It was actually when I went to Oslo. So I'd been to Oslo before, and I was there with in the winter of 2016. And like I said, I have a college friend from there. And so we met for dinner the night I got into Oslo. We met for dinner. We were hanging out, and I was just in a grumpy mood. And I didn't know if it was because I had been traveling.
I know that, Justin.
Oh, come on now. That happens very rarely. Dear listeners, I'm always very sorry. But I had this, and she was like, well, we're going to hang out tomorrow. And I just told her, I'm like, I need a little bit of time. I don't know what's going on, but I need a little bit of time. So we finished dinner, and I told her I would meet up with her the next night and we'd hang out. And so the next morning, I didn't really know what I was doing, but the next morning I got up and I went to the park outside of the palace, and I had myself a good cry at like 7 a.m. in the morning. And it was like a Sunday, I think, maybe a Saturday. I felt so bad for all of the people out jogging, like seeing this like middle-aged American man like just sitting on a bench crying. But I realized like there was something about it that I had the last time it was in Oslo. I was with my ex, and I hadn't had the like with everything with the pandemic, when we split up, with moving, all of that, there was just something hanging out that I didn't know about until I saw Oslo. So I had myself a good cry, and it was very like, not like, oh, I want to go back or anything like that. It was just a release of that emotion. And then I got myself on one of the little ferries that takes you out to the islands and the fjord. And I went to the beach, and I went skinny dipping in the Oslo harbor area. And it was like a wash, like washing everything from the past away type of thing. And it was like, I don't know, there was just something about it that like it was fascinating about the whole thing is I hadn't really planned on going to Oslo again because I had seen it. But then my friend was like, no, if you're going to be in Norway, like at least one night. And then I just, because of the timing and the train schedule and all that, I decided to stay, 2 nights, which meant I got a full day in Oslo. And It was kind of the universe telling me like you have one more thing you got to do here. I don't know. So it was one of those. It was really kind of nice because it was like, okay, that really amazing part of my life is now over, which means I can focus on the next really amazing part of my life.
One of the great things that I've learned, I don't know if it's great, one of the things that I've learned that I've really appreciated is something you touched on, which is when I learned that crying doesn't mean that you miss something or want something back.
Yes. And the whole idea of like the rules that we have, that we've set up as, they're the Sex and the City rules, right? Where it's like, you date somebody for so long, you have this much time to get over them, right? Like that all of that is just made up stuff. You grieve, even the word grieve isn't right, but like you grieve, you heal in a very different way, and it's okay. And like it just, I don't know. I will say though that there was a point where I was like, if somebody was filming this, like this is the start of like a really bad Hallmark movie, especially with the runners going by like that. But I had no shame. I was like, okay, I'm gonna cry here. That's fine. But yeah, it was really nice. It was nice. It's nice.
All right, Justin,
All right.
what's something you're looking forward to in 2024?
Something I am looking forward to in 2024. Well, I will be turning 45, which I'm excited about turning 45. I'm excited. As I mentioned, I think on the last time we talked or 2 times ago, whatever it was, I was depressed and, had suicidal tendencies in, late teens, early 20s. And so, for me, it's like just one of those like, wow, I made it this far. Like, this is pretty cool. And so just to be able to like hang out with my friends and, just enjoy being in the Pacific Northwest and going camping, even though I will be not sleeping at all given the books I read. Yeah. But just I'm looking forward to that. And then I am looking forward to, it looks like we may be taking a trip to the Philippines this spring. So
Oh,
that will be fun. If it happens, I'm really looking forward to that too. What about you?
we haven't been to New Zealand since 2019, and we've both been missing it quite a bit. So we're thinking about taking, extended trip later in the year to like Australia and New Zealand. So definitely looking forward to that. And it'll come right after the election, which I'm also hopeful is a democracy saving election. So
Well, so this New Zealand to Australia thing, you gotta let me know what's going on there because I haven't been back to Oz since 2011, and I was supposed to go in 2021, but the whole pandemic thing. So I may just have to like crash your guys' trip.
well, we'd be happy to have you. Maybe the chicks will be
Well,
down there too.
well, see, they were there this year. I mean, maybe they'll do another tour down there. That would be amazing.
We can all shave our balls and go.
Oh, we can all shave our ball. Yes, that'll be the next rendition of the podcast.
Check in next year. Okay, Justin, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll do it again next year.
All right. Well, thank you, Sean. Always a pleasure. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And I hope 2024 is great for you.
As we were recording, I received another message from Santa Claus, a Christmas wish. It reads, Merry Christmas, one and all, from the North Pole to your door. May your holidays be merry, bright, and full of magic evermore. And most importantly, may your holidays be filled with the people you love most, even if they do drive you as crazy as a sugar-hyped elf on Christmas Eve. A little corny, Santa, but thank you. Back at you. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for this special holiday episode and every episode that you've listened to and shared and liked and commented on. It's been an honor to be part of your lives this past year. I am truly grateful that you've welcomed Deep Dive into your homes and into your lives. And we have one more for you this year. Check back next week, New Year's Eve. Deep Dive is doing our second annual State of the Union, when I'll be joined by some more friends of the pod as we look back on the past year and discuss progress we've made or not, and how next year, election year in the United States, might unfold. In the meantime, from our house to yours, happy holidays, everybody.